Imagine this. You're walking through your home, but something feels off. The furniture is familiar, the walls the same color they've always been, yet behind every door lies a room you've never seen before. Some are warm, filled with forgotten memories and sunlit possibilities. Others are cold, sealed shut, pulsing with something ancient and buried, things you don't remember locking away. And then you realize this house is your mind. Most people live in only a few rooms of it. The ones they were told were safe. The logical kitchen, the nostalgic bedroom, the surface-level hallways of identity, morality, and ambition. But no one ever gave you a map to the basement or the attic, or the narrow, spiraling staircase behind the bookshelf that leads to something far older than you've ever dared to face. What if you've never truly entered your own mind? You were taught how to navigate the world outside, how to earn, obey, perform, survive, but never how to descend into the dark corridors of your own psyche. The curriculum skipped the chapters on shadow selves, subconscious prisons, and the terrifying freedom of self-examination. You've been taught to decorate the mask, not to question who built it, or why. Isn't it strange? We spend years learning math we'll never use, history we forget, facts that fade, but no one teaches us how to face the wars raging inside our own heads. No one tells us that sometimes the enemy wears our face, that the voice in our mind isn't always ours, that silence, real silence, can be louder than any scream. And so we live at the surface, chained not by external forces, but by an inner labyrinth we were never trained to enter. But what if the thing you fear to explore holds the key to everything you've been chasing? What if your anxiety, your indecision, your compulsions are not flaws to fix, but signposts pointing toward untraveled passages? What if your suffering isn't a malfunction, but a message? You weren't given the language to interpret it. You weren't told that the mind isn't a machine. It's a mythic landscape, a place of paradoxes, illusions, and buried gods. It isn't meant to be controlled, it's meant to be understood. But before you can understand it, you must dare to enter it. The question is no longer why you feel lost. The real question is, who locked the doors inside your own mind, and what happens when you find the key? The hidden problem and its psychological roots. You were never taught to enter the labyrinth of your own mind because those who designed the world you live in feared what you might find there. From the moment you could speak, the world began drawing maps for you, pre-approved routes through life. Be kind, be good, get a job, smile, conform. But no one explained that beneath those polished paths lie fault lines, cracks where the truth leaks through. You were shaped by culture, by schooling, by parents who themselves never ventured inward. You were told who to be, before you could even ask, "Who am I?" But what if the real you was buried beneath that conditioning? Carl Jung warned of the shadow, the rejected, repressed parts of yourself that society told you were dangerous. Anger, lust, envy, power. You locked them away because they didn't fit the role you were handed. Yet in doing so, you created a split, a fracture between the person you show the world and the one screaming beneath the surface. That fracture is the hidden problem, and it's tearing you apart. Nietzsche called it the sickness of modern man, the unbearable contradiction of being told to live with purpose while being severed from any deep inner compass. And Viktor Frankl knew that when we lose our why, we numb ourselves with distractions, addictions, or silent despair. The labyrinth isn't just complex, it's guarded. The guardians are internalized voices. Don't think about that. That's just weakness. Keep moving. They echo from authority figures long gone, but still living in your nervous system. These voices are not your own, but you obey them as if they are law. You begin to fear your own depth. So you stay in the shallow end of your being. You become addicted to certainty. You fill the silence with noise. You live in narratives handed down from a society that prefers you functional, not free. Because a person who truly knows themselves cannot be controlled. You were never meant to ask, why do I hate what I desire? Why do I feel alone in a crowded room? Why does my success feel like failure in disguise? These are dangerous questions, because the moment you ask them, really ask them, you begin to see through the veil. You begin to notice that much of what you believe about yourself isn't truth, but programming. But here's the haunting part. The more you ignore the labyrinth, the more it rules you from the shadows. Your moods shift without warning. You sabotage your own joy. You chase things that hollow you out, and you wonder why peace never stays for long. You think you're broken, but you're not. You're just following a map that never belonged to you. So the real question becomes, what happens when you stop following maps and start listening to the labyrinth itself? The most dangerous prisons are the ones you can't see. When you avoid the labyrinth of your mind, it doesn't vanish. It waits beneath your daily habits, inside your relationships, behind the words you say without knowing why. And while you move through life thinking you're making choices, something older, quieter, and far more powerful is making them for you. This is the unseen consequence, the illusion of freedom in a life driven by ghosts. Cognitive science calls them biases. Evolution calls them survival mechanisms. But they're really echoes, residual code written by past experiences you never processed, traumas you never acknowledged, beliefs you never questioned. These aren't just thoughts. They're the architects of your identity, and they are ruthless in their silence. Confirmation bias ensures you only see what you already believe. Negativity bias keeps you scanning the horizon for threats that no longer exist. The default mode network in your brain, your autopilot, runs the same narrative again and again, even if it leads you off a cliff. And still, you think, this is just who I am. But it's not. It's who you became in response to what you never understood. Think about it. How many relationships have you destroyed not because of what was said, but because of the silent stories playing in your head? How many times have you failed to start because the voice inside whispered, "What's the point?" How often do you confuse exhaustion for destiny? Because you've been running from yourself for so long. The labyrinth doesn't just sit inside your mind. It shapes the world you see. You call it reality, but it's a projection. Your unexamined fears become the lens through which you view others. Your unresolved shame distorts love. Your hidden envy poisons friendship. And slowly, quietly, your outer world becomes a mirror of the chaos you refuse to face within. We were not taught this. We were taught to blame circumstances, other people, the economy, fate. Anything but the internal architecture of the self. But Schopenhauer once wrote, "Every man takes the limits of his own field of vision for the limits of the world." What if your entire worldview is a defense mechanism? What if your personality is a fortress built to protect you from wounds you don't even remember receiving? And the most haunting question of all, what if the life you're living, your routines, your relationships, your goals, was chosen not by your deepest self, but by your deepest fear? You think the cost of entering the labyrinth is high, but the cost of avoiding it is everything. You were told to find yourself by following the rules, but what if finding yourself requires breaking them? Rebellion doesn't always come with fire and fury. Sometimes it looks like stillness, choosing to sit in silence when the world demands performance. Sometimes it means walking away from everything that once gave you comfort, because comfort is often a leash. To break free from the labyrinth, you don't destroy it. You descend into it, consciously, courageously, knowing you may never come back the same. And that's the point. The first act of liberation is to doubt the voice in your head, not with hostility, but with curiosity. Ask, whose voice is this? Your father's disapproval, a teacher's sarcasm, the whisper of a culture that thrives on insecurity? If it isn't yours, you don't have to obey it. The second act is to confront the shadow. Jung didn't say to kill it, he said to integrate it. The parts of you you've buried, rage, desire, selfishness, rebellion, aren't poison, they're power. Power twisted in darkness because no one ever taught you how to hold it with light. You think healing means becoming better. It doesn't. It means becoming whole. Nietzsche spoke of becoming the Übermensch, the one who creates their own values, no longer shackled by the herd. But this doesn't start with ego. It starts with death, the death of illusion. You must be willing to burn the version of yourself that was created to survive, so the one born to live can emerge. You break free by stopping the chase. Stop chasing approval. Stop chasing answers from people who don't even know who they are. Stop chasing perfection, because perfection is often just fear dressed in gold. Instead, you descend. You write without editing, speak without rehearsing, sit with your discomfort instead of medicating it. You learn to tell the truth not just to others, but to yourself, the brutal kind, the kind that feels like ripping off your skin but reveals something raw and real underneath, and slowly, the labyrinth shifts. Not because it became smaller, but because you became vast. You start recognizing old patterns not as fate, but as familiar traps. You see beauty in uncertainty. You reclaim your instincts. You realize that the you who once felt broken wasn't flawed, just fragmented. Rebellion, it turns out, is sacred. It's the soul's refusal to die in captivity. So now, the question isn't whether you can break free, it's whether you're ready to lose who you were, to become who you were meant to be. You've walked through the corridor of illusions, cracked the mirror of inherited identity, and dared to touch the walls of the labyrinth. Now comes the final door. Behind it, there is no monster, no secret formula, no enlightened guru waiting with the answer. There's only this, a reflection. And it stares back at you not as a stranger, not as a mask, but as something ancient, terrifying, and beautiful. It is you, before the world got to you. Here is the ultimate truth. You are not the voice in your head. You are the one who hears it. You are not your fears. You are the one who survived them. You are not your desires. You are the one who chooses which to follow. You are not your past. You are the space where the past ends and possibility begins. The mind is a labyrinth not because it was designed to trap you, but because it was meant to transform you. Each dead end is a lesson, each twist a test, and at its center the revelation, you were never lost, you were just asleep. What you seek isn't hidden in the external world, not in titles, not in validation, not in control. What you seek is already inside you, waiting for silence deep enough to hear it. This is why the journey hurts, because it's not about becoming more. It's about becoming less of what you're not. Strip away the layers. Let the ego dissolve. Let the performance collapse. What remains is not emptiness, but clarity, a presence so profound it cannot be explained, only experienced. A sense of I am that needs no decoration, no justification, no applause. Frankl called it the defiant human spirit. Jung called it the self. The Stoics called it logos, the spark of reason, of order, of the divine within. Call it what you want. But once you touch it, you can never go back to who you were. The chains fall not because the world changes, but because you do. You stop reacting, you start choosing, you stop seeking, you start seeing. And in that space between stimulus and response, you become infinite. So now ask yourself, have you truly met yourself? Have you faced the rooms in your mind that still wait in darkness? Are you willing to descend, not to escape life, but to finally live it? The labyrinth was never your enemy. It was your birthplace, your battleground, your resurrection. You don't need a map anymore. You are the key. Now open the final door. And remember, the mind is not a prison. It's a universe. And you were never meant to live on the surface of it. You were meant to wander through the stars inside you.